Dar Chapter 5, Checking Snares. When Dar got to the fire pit, the clanspeople were already there waiting for him. They asked about Keenock and were relieved to hear that his bleeding had stopped. Keenock was the clan's best hunter, and his presence would be missed. The 4 other men always listened closely to his ideas about how to get the meat, skins, and furs necessary to clothe and feed the clan. In the end, after discussion and argument, they usually agreed with Keenock's suggestions. Dar ate a hurried meal with the others and then returned to his uncle's side. Keenock was awake, but his face was tight with pain. Mora was putting the last of the healing salve on his wounds. Dar nodded to his uncle and put on his shoulder pouch. "I'm going to look for more healing plants today." Mora gestured her approval. "My mother was told by her grandmother that the medicine works best if it's made from fresh leaves and flowers." Keenock shook his head. "Dar, you're needed for another job. It would be fine if you found more of the plants, but their work is done. I'm no longer bleeding." Keenock took the bowl of steaming water and deer fat Mora offered him. "I had planned to check and reset my snares in the pine forest today. I want you to do it for me. There are 5 snares. Head into the forest just beyond the second rapid up the river." Dar forgot his sleepless night. Keenock had given him an important task to do. "I'll leave right away, Uncle." "It's a half-day walk to the forest. Be back by sundown," Keenock said. "I don't want you walking alone in the dark." Mora took the pile of deer meat she had removed from the shin bone the day before and wrapped it in wet leaves. "Take this for your midday meal." Dar put the meat into his shoulder pouch. He picked up a wooden club and his spear and turned to leave. Keenock frowned at him. "Is your spear point sharp?" Dar grinned. "Sharp enough for emptying snares and hunting plants." He waved and left the tent before his uncle could reply. Dar started out along the riverbank and hurried through the familiar territory of his clan. When he reached the first rapid, he saw 3 suspended basket traps. They were positioned to catch salmon as the fish migrated up the river to spawn. There were salmon in all the baskets. Today, Dar left them to be emptied by the younger children. The riverbank was wet and slippery from the spray of the rapid, and Dar had to slow down. When he reached the second rapid, the sun was almost overhead, but it was shrouded in fog and gave little warmth. He turned and headed for the pine forest. The forest was part of his clan's hunting territory, but he had never been there alone. It was hard to find the snares in the dim light. Dar was drawn to the first snare by the yelps of a fox that dangled by one leg from a noose attached to a pine sapling. He silenced it with one hard blow of his club. He removed the fox from the noose and admired its pelt. To reset the snare, Dar pulled the sapling down far enough so the noose could be looped over a bone on the ground. He replaced the heavy rock that held both the noose and the bone in position. When an animal walked into the noose to pull at the bone, the snare would be tripped. The sapling would spring upright, and the animal would be caught in the tightening noose. The next snare was empty, but the third held a half-eaten fox with the noose around its neck. There were bear tracks on the ground. Dar removed the mangy, worm-infested animal and threw it aside. The sun was now directly overhead, still veiled by fog. He reset the snare and hurried on. The 4th snare was empty, but Dar heard whining from the 5th trap up ahead. When he got there, walking more slowly with the fox draped over his shoulder, he found the snare had trapped a fox cub. Dar put down his burdens. "You're too little to be off by yourself," he said to the struggling fox. "Calling for your mother won't help you now." Dar picked up the cub by the scruff of its neck and looked into the eyes of the terrified animal. He loosened the noose around its leg. "All right, go." The little fox dropped to the ground and ran off into the underbrush. Uncle would not have released the cub, Dar thought, but I'm glad I did. As Dar bent to gather up his gear, he heard a sudden crackling of leaves behind him. He jumped. He picked up his spear and ducked behind a tree trunk. After waiting a moment, he carefully peered from behind the tree. A heavily bearded stranger was walking rapidly toward him.